There is some. I start from where Dr. Sri Hari Krishna has left. That is his last few slides. That the 21st century skills. From there, I pick it up. We say that creative teaching leads to successful learning. All of us would agree, especially in today's learning environment. Creative learning is the skill which is essential, you can say, for becoming successful in the growing competition, especially in the education industry, in academics in this century. And by bringing creativity in the teaching method, or you can say in the learning process, because sir was focusing more on the learning process of our prospects, of our learning consumers, teacher can make the student learn or do learn doing very creative things. And how do we do it? Education, if you see in the modern times, has become an interactive process where each student has a different nature towards knowledge, and hence they will certainly learn in a very different way. But in order to bring out the most creative perception in the classroom, to make the classroom more learning environment, or to make it more interactive, a great deal of creative effort has to be put in in a very effective way. We can say that though creativity is a required element in today's this one for, but creative instructors also must know and also understand the program or their field, their domain area, and how can they bring in, create that appropriate learning environment. We will be trying to going through different creative pedagogies which will definitely foster the learning orientation, which will create a willingness to learn, the attributes that could, you can say, enable capacity to encourage with the lifelong, make the to empower, to engage, to empower the students with cognitive and social tools at the same time, that would enable them to positively interact with a very unknown future. So how can we as an instructor, we can present innovative and challenging activities which will prompt and encourage the students to work creatively so that they can sail from a problem and to arrive at a particular solution. Now, there are creative techniques that must be done, of course, in a very supportive course environment with appropriate time allocation also, so that the students are given enough time to discover and to develop creative ways to solve a particular problem. Now, I hope the screen is changing, because now we will be here discussing about 15 different creative ways how we can engage the students through discussions, through problem solving, through creative thinking, and many more. Now, when you see the list of 15 different creative ways, we need to, as a teacher, we need to also consider that not all of them will be applicable to the domain area where we are basically coming from. Now, some might be applicable for technology courses, some might be applicable for pharmaceutical courses, some might be applicable for what you call medical lab technology, or say management courses, or for science, or for language courses. Now, these are the first 15 that we discussed, and we thought that we will be discussing about these. Out of this role play, I have put a asterisk against role play and storyboarding, which will be taken up in the later part of the in this 2-hour session that has been allotted to me in detail. Now, to start with assumption busting, what it all means, we will try to see. It is particularly effective We're just stuck up in a point and we don't know from where to go about it. So we are falling short of ideas. So at that time, how can we motivate the students? How can we encourage the students? Now, in this, everyone makes an assumption. Everyone makes assumptions, various types of assumptions everyone makes about how the world looks around us. For example, that is which in a creative situation can you can say can prevent seeing or generating possibilities. That means what we are trying to say from assumptions busting, we are trying to create several different types of assumptions which may be correct or which may not be correct. It's just that we are making some hypothetical assumption and trying to generate the possibilities. And deliberately, we are trying to seek out and address how the previously unquestioned assumption stimulates this sort of creative thinking. See, our basic motive is, or intention is to inculcate or develop creative thinking among the students. Now, how do we do it? For example, considering the type of program that we are engaged with or the type of subject that we are dealing with, what we can do, we can list the assumptions associated with a task or a problem that we would like to share, do with our students. For example, that a solution is impossible because there is a lot of time constraints, there is a lot of cost constraints. So then what happens? Something works because certain rules or conditions and people believe a need or think of certain things. Then what do? Then ask under what conditions. We have to what you call motivate the students. We have or we have to provoke the students that under what conditions these assumptions are not true. Whatever you are saying, they might be the positive side, but we try to understand why these assumptions cannot be true and continue the process of these examinations, that this is an old assumption. Just keep on provoking them and till they are challenged and the new ones are centered. This is one that students are coming up with. Rather, we are so that they can come out with varied alternatives or various different types of assumptions considering all the conditions. But before that, we have to give them what are the constraints in order to solve this particular problem to arrive at a solution. The next one we can say is the what do we mean by the brainstorming, which we all do it as a management teacher, or in case of science or pharmacy or pharmaceutical management also, we have been doing it in vocational universities also. It's a useful tool, as we all know, because it develops creative solutions to a problem. And it's a lateral thinking process where the students are asked to develop ideas or thoughts that may seem very crazy for them, that may seem to be very shocking for them at first. But then what happens? Participants can then change and improve their original and useful ideas. They can this brainstorming can help define an issue, refine it, diagnose it, the problem, then arrive at possible solutions, which might there will be resistance to this proposed solutions also. Now, how do a teacher who has just entered into this teaching profession, how does a teacher does it? The teacher might define the problem, lay out the criteria to be met, keep the session focused on the problem, and then be sure that no one criticizes or evaluates our ideas during the session, because children have or students have a tendency to deviate from the main topic. So as a teacher, as a faculty, as a resource person, we need to keep our and bring them back if they are really, and tell them that you are being a little bit of impractical and don't try to dampen the situation from where we are trying to arrive at a probable solution. So one person will be appointed to note down, to take notes very clearly, and ideas should be studied. And then after the session gets over, what we can do, we can reevaluate them. We can evaluate and reevaluate, and then can arrive at a probable solution. The third part, it is known as the brain sketching. Now, there is a difference. There we were doing what you call brainstorming, where we were looking at different ideas. Here, in case of brain sketching, what we are trying to do is, as to solve a specific problem, students may make sketches. Here we are trying to even develop the skill, make them develop their ideas, put into a piece of paper, and then pass evolving sketches to their neighbors. Here the neighbors means the classmates. Now how can you do, how can you apply this in a classroom setup? We can make the students sit in a group of 6 to 8 around a table, okay, sort of a group discussion, or in a circle. Then what we can do, the questions or the problems should be well explained and understood by each of the student. Even though they may be a group of 5 to 6 students, but each student, we make sure that they understand the problem, and the problem is well explained and understood by them. Then each participant privately makes one or more sketches and passes the sketch to the person on the right when it is finished, or when a brief set time has passed. That means you have to not only explain and make the student understand the problem, but we have to give them a duration for coming up from doing the sketch also. Once they are done with the sketch, they have to pass the sketch to the person sitting on the right. Then the participants develop or annotate the sketch passed to them. They will try to draw inferences or conclusion. What is the message that is being conveyed with the help of the solution, or with the help of the sketch, or use them to inspire new sketches which are passed in turn. That because the person who is sitting in the right, the student will make certain more assumptions, and then the student will add on more few sketches on the same picture and pass it on to the next. That is known as something brain sketching. You are coming up with, you are actually trying different alternatives and giving new dimension as it passes through each member in that 5 to 6 in a 5 to 6 member group. This is also one way of doing it. The fourth concept that we are trying to say in this is the concept mapping, or the. Now, what we are trying to say, this also majority of us, we do it, especially if we are in the postgraduate level, that it represents the knowledge in a graphical form. Okay, the networks consist of nodes, particular points, and which represents the concepts, and the links, which represents the links, which represents the relationships between these concepts. That means from the basic core, from there we create the nodes first. From the nodes, which forms the concepts and the links of the main area, which is in the center part of the drawing, and from there we are trying to build in relationships along with all these concepts and the links. Then the concept maps can aid. What will this do? This mind mapping or this concept map, they will aid in generating the ideas, designing more complex structures, you can say, or communicating complex ideas. So that means in order to make our complex thoughts, when we put it in a drawing, it becomes much more simpler, because they explicit the integration of the old and the new knowledge. Concept maps can help the instructors assess the student understanding, in which form it is taking, or what exactly he must be thinking, and that is the reason he has put the various, you can say, the flow diagrams or the flow charts in a particular way. Now, what you do it as a teacher, how can we do it? This was the concept. Now, how do we do it? We'll create a focus question. This focus question will specify the problem, or it will specify the issue. The map should this map should be able to help us to resolve it. Now, list the key concepts. Suppose we would like to understand about segmentation, we would like to understand about target positioning, we would like to understand about values and lifestyle segmentation, or points of difference or points of parity. So what we do, we list down certain key concepts in similar way that apply to the area of the knowledge. Okay. Now, put the most general inclusive concept at the top of the list, and the most specific at the bottom. So that means from the general we have to narrow down the funnel, and we have to reach at the bottom. So build a hierarchical, what we can say, an organization of the concepts using the posts it on the wall or against a whiteboard or a large sheet of paper that you can use it. Those are the props that you can use it to funnel down your idea from a general area to narrow it down. Revision, and then what you can do, revision here becomes a key element in the concept mapping. So what will happen, the participants, they will need to be able to move concepts and reconstruct the map wherever they are going wrong or wherever they can attach it. So they will even seek, or they will even map it or link it, do cross links between the different concepts, add the links, words to the lines between the concepts. They can add solid lines also, or they can add what you call broken lines also if they are not directly linking to it. Now, the next one which appears is known as the exaggeration. Now, what does this exaggeration include? That is the two forms of the magnify, or you can say you can stretch it, or that is two forms of it. Either you stretch it, or you do the opposite, that is you compress it. That means either you magnify it or you minimize the entire concept. So this method actually that becomes very helpful in building ideas for, these are all for arriving from a problem to a particular solution. Now, it is useful when to illustrate a problem by testing unspoken assumptions about its scale. Now, how do we do it? It is useful to illustrate a problem by testing the unspoken skill. Means what we are trying to say in this case is that one think about it, it is like, what would one student think about what would be appropriate if the problem were out of a different order of magnitude. That is, each learner, we know, they think it, they have a different thought process. So how do we do it? First, we have to define the problem. First, we have to explain the problem. We see to it that the problem is well understood by the student. Then what we do? Then we will tell the student, provoke the student, motivate the student, how the problem needs to be addressed. So what will happen? The student will develop different ideas, list all the components part of the problem. That means one side he will make a list of the how he can stretch the problem, how he can magnify the problem, and the other part he will come with another option that is known as the compress of it, how its objectives and what are the constraints, how you can minimize it. And choosing one component, develop ways of exaggerating it, and then on a separate sheet it will do the what you call the matching of the the magnified one with the one which it has minimized, and like a match the following, it will try to come out with a solution. This is known as exaggeration. The next one, which we have heard it also, we have done it also, that is known as fishbone. Now this the fishbone technique, it uses a visual organizer to identify the possible causes of a problem. Now, this technique discourages the what you want to say it over here, the possible causes of a problem. Now, what are the possible causes of the problem? No, yes.
Arpita, I have something to say. You are live on the Facebook. The participants, those who are not able to connect through Team, now you can join live through Facebook.
What am I supposed to do?
Nothing, ma'am. This is just for participants. You are live on Facebook.
Okay, fine. Thank you so much. Okay, I thought there is some problem with the technical problems, so I thought let me keep
like
going.
Bilal was facing problem due to bandwidth. So participants, those who are facing problem, they can join through Facebook also.
Okay, thank you so much
Please
for the
continue.
information.
Sorry for the
Okay, thank you
interruption.
so much. Not at all. So own technique, it will use it uses a visual organizer to identify the problem, identify the possible causes of a problem. Now this technique, what happens, they will discourage the partial or the premature solutions, because if you have seen a fish bone, okay, it from the middle it runs, and across the spine there are several what you call sideways also, the thorns are arranged in such a way it will demonstrate the relative importance of and the interactions between the different parts of a problem. Now, what you do, how a teacher can arrive or make the student do it in a classroom. On a broad sheet of paper, you draw a long arrow. Bow and arrow is there. You draw a long arrow horizontally across the middle. Okay, the way we drew it, and then you label the arrowhead with a title. So the arrowhead becomes your problem to be explained. Okay, and this is the backbone of the fish. Consider that arrow as the backbone of the fish, and draw the spurs from this backbone or the thorns slightly on a what you call in a slanting way, and this will at a 45-degree angle, and for every likely cause of the problem that the group can think, you can mark it on that and you can label it on that. Then what will happen? Then the group who is working on that, they will consider each spur or each line, taking up the simplest, what you call the first one, to address first the most simplest problem, and slowly you move towards from the simple problem towards the complex problem, so that part by part you can what you call, you can see clarity, and because a simple explanation may make more will approach towards the more and more complex one. So ideally what happens, this fishbone is redrawn several times so that the position along the backbone, it reflects the relative importance of the different parts of the problem, with the most important part, that means as we go on moving towards the main problem, we keep on eradicating as we arrive at a solution, and then we reach the arrowhead where actually we are trying to focus the main problem. Okay, so this is again another method what we can say that we are trying to do it by the fishbone method. So one thing you might have noticed, that we are giving several problems to the students, and we are telling them by making them think critically, so that they're not only able to think critically, as it was explained by sir, that they need to communicate at the same time, they need to collaborate with the other group members. Okay, they have to think, and at the last their creativity, actually we are trying to develop that creativity from within them, so that their skills are sharpened to arrive at a particular problem. Now the next one is known as the Kipling questions or preliminary questions method. Now what do we understand this? In this Kipling questions on preliminary question method, we are trying to answer the 6 thinking hats: what, where, who, when, how. And when the problem solving or to do or to arrive at a decision making. The Kipling questions are basically answering, simply asking, provoking the students with, or bombarding the students with 5 W's and 1 H: who, what, when, where, why, and how, in order to solve a problem, in order so that their decision is, they are able to arrive at a particular decision. Now, when we are saying the next one, that is known as laddering. Now, what is that laddering or the why method? In case of
Slide is not moving, ma'am.
No, I am not moving the slide. I'm sorry, because I'm trying to explain each of them, ma'am. I'm trying to not show each of them separately. what I've done it, I've noted down all the 15 creative ways in one slide on a particular serial order, and then I'm trying to explain it, how we can use each of them under what context and how we can use it, we can use each of them. Am I clear now? Okay. Now moving on to the next one, because this all we have to do it. These all we have to do it. Otherwise, we would have ended up in an activity. We will end up in an activity because we will be doing it with role playing and storyboarding. This one more focuses on role playing and storyboarding, but we are trying to understand what are the other ways also, what are the other 13 ways also where we can make creative ways to engage our students, to empower them, to arrive at a solution, to help them think critically also. To help them improve their communication skills also, presentation skills also, collaborate their thought process and collaborate with their group members also. Now, in the laddering, what we are trying to say, the laddering method is also known as the why method. Now, what are we trying? It involves toggling between two abstracts or to create ideas. That means it is otherwise known as the why method. What does this laddering technique involves? It involves creation, it involves reviewing, and it involves modification of the hierarchical knowledge. Okay. Now that means again it involves creation, it involves reviewing, and it involves modification of the hierarchical knowledge. Now in a laddering containing, what we'll try to do, the abstract ideas or the concept that a student develops, what it does, the items are lowered down or are detailed, okay, or made subsets of the ones higher up. That means if there's an idea, we are coming up with the next subset of the idea. So one moves between the abstract and the concrete ideas, because first it will try to develop an abstract idea in order to prove that its idea is not an abstract idea. It will try to provide supporting what you call concept so that it becomes concrete idea, and this will help the students understand how an expert actually categorizes into classes. How are we able to categorize each student in a particular group, and this will help the students clarify their concepts and how they can build the relationships between one concept with the other. Now, how do we do it? This was the concept, but how do we make the students actually involve and actively participate in the classroom environment? What we do it, we begin with an existing idea by asking what wider category is this in an example, okay? And then what we try to do, we ladder down by finding more examples, then ladder up again in a wider category. That means either we are going one step down, okay, or we are going up one step up. When we are going one step up, moving up the ladder, that means we are widening the concept from the new examples obtained from by first reducing it. And generally laddering up, that means you are allowing for more exposure into new areas, while laddering down, you are moving towards the niche area, towards more specific aspect of the problem area. While questions are laddering up, so what questions are laddering down? That means for every why question, you are challenging while you are going down. That is what we are trying to say. In a particular, when we actually do it in an activity, these all techniques becomes much more simpler for us in a given setup when we are actually doing it in a classroom environment. If the student says that comes up with a solution for any problem that we have posted in this one, in order to segment a market, in order to target a market, or we say that we have to position a particular product, and how do we position? For every opinion or every solution that he is going to give us, we are posing a question to that student: what if we are doing it in the other way also? So we are challenging in every step that he is coming up with a solution. That is the meaning of laddering up and laddering down. Now, the next one is known as the negative brainstorming or the reverse brainstorming. Now, brainstorming always involves a always thinks about coming up with a lot of positive ideas or ways in order to solve a problem. But in case of negative brainstorming, what happens? We are analyzing a short list of existing ideas. We are not taking the entire broad spectrum of ideas that we have already worked upon it, but rather what we are trying to do it is that we are only hand picking up only few ideas, few listed existing ideas. That means we are starting with a very narrow scope, and then rather than initially what you call massing of the ideas in a very conventional brainstorming, that means we are not allowing them with by giving them the entire plate to them, but we are telling them examine these the ideas which are not successful. We have actually picked up those ideas, convert those into positive ones. Okay, come out with a new or complex or where there is little margin of error out of the ones which are already failed ones. This negative brainstorming, what will happen? What could go wrong with this project? We are trying to say that what could go wrong with, that means with the available what you call negative thoughts, we are saying what all more can go wrong in an existing setup. Things might be not be working, but what all there are possible ways things can become from bad to worse. And if the things become from bad, then where do we stand? In this case, actually, negative or reverse brainstorming basically helps, and it is valuable when it is difficult to identify direct solutions to a problem. This actually happens while in institutional building also. Also, when we are trying to build up the academic rigor of within an institution also. Now, what happens? How do we do it? How do we do it with the students? After clearly defining a problem or a challenge, we ask the students, how could I cause this problem? We are not telling them how could I provide the solution, but we are telling them how could I cause this problem and make it more difficult? How could I make things more worse? It is just negative, okay? Or as with brainstorming, we are saying that we are coming off with this one more good ideas and we are rejecting them. Here we are not rejecting it. We are asking, we are making them probing them that how could I make things more worse? That it is irreversible. That's what evaluating. Once you start evaluating these negative ideas, this could lead to possible positive solutions. Minus minus always becomes plus. That is what that algebraic equation actually we are trying to bring it over here. Now I'll just give, in the next one is known as role play. In this case of role playing, what we are trying to do it here is, we all have done it in majority of the role playing exercises. Each student, they take up a role of a person. We all know it, that who has been affected by an issue or studies and issues or events from the perspectives of that person. How a particular one person is trying to arrive at a solution. Now, how the role plays, what we do it in generally in a classroom setup, how do we do it? This role plays should give the students an opportunity to practice what they have learned with the help of the concepts that the resource person has taught them, and should interest the students. They will provide what you call concrete information. They will give them clear role. The teacher will give them clear role descriptions so that the students can play their what you call roles with a lot of confidence. And once the role play is finished, they will spend time on debriefing. But I'm not going more detail into it because we will be doing role play and this one boarding in a one is known as stands for. It is abbreviation, and each of the word it has got each alphabet in the word carries meaning. or it asks you one question. Now, this method, this is a checklist basically, and it will promote ways to think about an existing product or an issue or a problem basically, to create new ways or new techniques to think about it. Now, we are breaking down it. S, like for example, Stamper, S stands for substitute. What can you substitute? It is a product. What other product can you substitute for this main product? What are the substitute available, or what are the other possible solutions for this problem or for this issue? So what can you substitute? S stands for substitute. C, what we are trying to say is combine. C stands for combine. What can you combine or bring together so that it will improve, or it will help us to arrive at a possible outcome, one of the possible or choice of alternatives. A stands for adapt. What can you adapt for use as a solution? That means you are basically trying to make use or adapt or a situation or a condition, okay, to arrive so that for use, so that we can arrive at a solution. So what can you adapt? M stands for modify, minify, magnify. Okay, either you modify it, or you minimize it, you narrow down your, okay, or you magnify it. Okay, so it stands for modify, minify, and magnify. Can you change the item in some way? What can you remove, or that is modify? What can you add? You magnify it. And can you change the item in some way? You will try to minify it. So M stands for modify, minify, or magnify. So S stands for substitute, C stands for combine, A stands for adapt, M stands for your minify, magnify, and modify. Moving on to the next P, so this one P. P stands for put. Put to other uses. How can we put the things to different or other uses? Okay, how can we put the product? How can we put this problem, or how can this problem can arise in some other situation also? What are the other solutions also that we can provide? Eliminate. It stands for eliminate. What can you eliminate? Completely eliminate, so that it will help us to arrive at a particular solution. It is not necessary always we arrive at a solution keeping everything in that place. We might have to do a little bit of changes also. In the process, we might eliminate also. Then the next one is known as rearrange. The last R stands for rearrange. So what can be rearranged in some way? Okay, if some particular block is not fitting, we change its position and we place it in place. So that means P stands for put, E stands for elimination of, okay, and R stands for rearrange. So how do we do it? What we tell to the students, we say by providing a list of active verbs that may be associated with your problems. Okay, we tell them these are the active verbs that you have it. Okay, we provide this list of active verbs, so that then these verbs can be associated. It may be, it may not be associated with the problem, and hence you create an idea, come out with an idea with these words, and the verbs are about, this will help the students to get students to think about the action. They have to always think about the action and what will be the repercussions of it, or what will be the what are the outcomes of these actions will be. So we are trying to make them move or think them in a forward manner. This is the method of Scamper. Next one is known as post up. Now, when we are talking about post up, what we are trying to say, up, that means we are trying to gather ideas from large groups, numbering from the dozens to the hundred. That means we are basically accepting or attracting the students to share their ideas. Participants are given slips of paper, they jot it down, or post it, or notes are given to them. They will jot down their ideas onto them. Then they will be asked to write down on their ideas which are discussed or evaluated, so that they don't forget it. They can list down as many ideas on that post-it notes. So the instructors, what they will do it, they may collect it from the large number of ideas swiftly and then create a sense of participation and ownership at the same time. That means we are not trying to eliminate anyone from this group, because as a student you might have also seen that some students, especially when they are working in a group setup, they tend to keep themselves, they tend to keep their mouth shut. They don't like to participate. So what we do here in this case, how do we do it in a classroom setup? We tell each student in with a notepad of at least what you call few pages. We give it to them, or with the post-it pads. They keep what you call, they contain idea jogging graphics, or we might give it to them with idea jogging graphics also, or they will keep writing it to them, and so that they can separate them, and a question or a problem is read out to them, to the group. How do we do this? What would it take to, okay, to arrive at a particular solution? This sort of questions will be put to them, okay, will be asked to them, and that students, what they will do, they will write down one idea in each sheet in any order that would they like it. And once the writing begins to slow down, that means their ideas are slowing down slowly, okay, they can post it on a flip chart paper onto the wall, and then the students who are working as a group, they will discover and explore. That means students with similar ideas, they can be grouped together and they will be given the chance to explain their idea in a much better way. That means after we have pasted on their ideas on the wall, we can form a group of comments, the group with the similar ideas, and then we can ask the students to that particular, what are they trying to convey, or what is their idea all about, in order to arrive to that particular solution. Next one is known as storyboarding. This also we will be doing it separately. Now this can be compared to something known as spreading the students the thoughts on a wall as they work on a project to solve a problem. Now what will they do? The storyboards can help with planning, ideas, communications of the and organizing that particular idea or that particular story, which will develop into a particular story. Now this method, in what way does it allows? It will to allow the students to see the interconnections. Okay, how one idea will relate to another idea, and how they can bring all the pieces together to form one piece, or to form one story, one good story, or one meaningful story from the ideas that they have been working upon it. Now, once the ideas flow, the students become immersed in the problem, and they will tag the teams with other ideas. Now, what do you do in this case? How do we do it? We can do it actually in a PowerPoint presentation also. We will discuss it in the later part of the presentation. We use a cork board or a similar surface, or a thermocol board also. We pin up the index cards or use it post-it notes on a whiteboard. Then begin with a set of topics, the cards, and under each place the header with their secondary points. Now under these we place the subheadings, so that at a later stage we can join them and come up with the one particular story. The next one is known as reversal. Now what do we mean by reversal? Is that a method takes a given situation and turns it around. In every case, we were trying to come up with a situation. Here a situation has been given to them, and we are trying to turn it around, inside out, backwards, or upside down. Okay, these are the different ways we are trying to reverse a method. Any situation that can be reversed in several ways. Then we look for familiar problem or situation. Now what happens, these all methods which all have been listed down, which are considered to be the creative ways in order to engage the students within the classroom setup. It depends upon your domain area. Not all of these creative ways will be applicable to each of your program or each the subject that we have to actually identify which will suit or which will meet our requirement depending upon the type of subject that we are dealing in the class or we are teaching the students. Now, in this case, what will happen if a room is dark? Okay, in the case of the reversal, what we do, if a room is dark and we look for ways to make it lighter. Simple example, just we are discussing. So instead of looking for ways of adding light, what we do it, we look for ways to remove the darkness. Okay, so how do we do it? We either put, for example, by putting mirrors or white paint in dark corners so that the room looks. So situation has already been given to us, but we are coming out, we are trying to reverse it in moving it backwards and or turning it upside down. The last one is known as what is known as the jigsaw method. This is what you call a teaching strategy of organizing the student group work that helps the students collaborate, jigsaw, okay, and rely on the other. That means no student will work in silo. No student will work in what you call at an individual level. This teaching strategy, what happens, it becomes very effective for accomplishing multiple tasks at once and for giving them a greater sense of individual responsibility. And this individual responsibility is actually with the group responsibility. So with this simple approach to group work, each individual has, you can say, you will notice that something unique to contribute to their group outcome. In the same way, each piece of jigsaw puzzle which we have seen it, because if one of the puzzle is missing, the piece of the puzzle is missing, the puzzle does not become complete. Similarly, if one of the idea of any one student is missing, we will not be able to what you call will not be able to create that entire story. So no one else is doing the same task. No, there won't be any repetition. That means each student who is participating in the jigsaw puzzle, its work will be unique and its work will be different from the other student who is working. And each student experiences a higher sense of ownership and automatically an accountability to the members of the group. Now, what we are trying to see, it allows the teacher also to break the students into groups and as appropriate and assign and make assignments into smaller pieces for accomplishing the task with more detail. The students who are little introvert also, they will also have to participate in this group activity. And when working independently, see, they may be in a group, but still they are working independently and students are accountable strictly to themselves. If they're not completing, that means they are not able to contribute in that group activity. So the jigsaw method could be used to improve conversations, communication, especially how to communicate, how to converse in a group setup. That also will be helpful for them. What makes the students different from one another? Each of their thought process actually comes into the forefront and it helps the student also identify where they do a self-analysis of their own also. So these are what you can say 15 different ways in which a student can learn, or it will help the teacher to make the learning process more and more interesting in a classroom environment. I hope we might be doing it all, majority of them, but it's simply that we don't give a name to it, but we do it in the classroom setup, depending upon the complexity of the course or the topic that we are handling. Because in today's this one, lot of importance or a lot of focus is given on continuous internal evaluation, also CIE. because these days every regulatory authority also asks the institutions what are the different methods or what are the different ways that you are involving the students in a classroom setup, especially when we have a mixed bag of students in a classroom. Now, moving further, role play. Introduction to role play. What exactly? We all know that role play takes place between two or more people who actually act out the roles to explore a particular scenario. As teachers, we are doing it, but it's most useful to help students. Why do we what you call implement role play within the classroom? Because we want to prepare the students for unfamiliar or difficult situations. Now this becomes an opportunity. Role play actually becomes an opportunity for the students to grapple with material in simulated, or you can say real world environment. It will force the students also to apply their knowledge, reflect on the key issues, consider alternative viewpoints also. Role play is majority of the time undertaken by the commerce, management, economic, fraternity faculty members also. And what you call this role play is any speaking. It's a speaking what you call activity when we try to put ourselves into somebody else's shoes, or when we try to stay in that what you call and put ourselves into an imaginary situation. It is not the actual situation, but we are trying to say. So there are two things actually in a role play. It is either the imaginary people and it is the imaginary situation. So when we are talking about imaginary people, that means it's a fun, it's a joy of a role play that we are in a very short span of time, we become anyone that we would like to be. We would like to do the role play of a president or the queen, or you can say a millionaire or a businessman. Okay, the choice is endless for us. And the students, what happens in that case, they also take on the opinion of someone else. That is for and against debates are also can be used in case of role play, and the class can be split into those who are expressing views in favor and those who are expressing against the same. That is the imaginary people we are talking about. But the second part is known as the imaginary situation. Now, when we are talking about imaginary situation, that means we are telling them it can be a restaurant setup, it can be a company setup, it can be an airport setup, or it can be a hospital setup. We are looking out for a lost property also. So all possible role plays, or you can give them an organization setup also, which is facing a lot of attrition. So how an organization will face it, or there is a shortage of ideas and products are not good. The company is not generating a lot of profits. How do we do come out with different ideas? So it can be an R&D setup also. So these are the different ways where we say that role plays have become a very important part. Now, why should you use role play in the classroom? That's a question that we are asked. That why are you using role play? Since childhood, you will also all of us will agree that memorable classroom experiences are valuable for several reasons. Our classroom environment. Why do we remember certain setup or a certain class event even when we are aging? Because if something from our school days today sticks with us for years to come, it's definitely the way have been engaging with us, the unique learning experience that we might have experienced while we were students, and the way our teacher might have involved us in that particular classroom. So as teachers, since we are today wearing the shoes of teacher, so as teachers, what happens? We want our students to not only gain knowledge they need, but also we would like to have fun and make them feel comfortable in the process of gaining knowledge. So by incorporating this role play in the classroom setup, it will add variety, it will change the pace, It will create opportunities for a lot of language production or a lot of, and it will involve lot of fun. Now it can become an integral part of the class, or if it is not interesting, and it can be a complete failure also. So if the faculty thinks, if the resource persons, if the teacher thinks that how this activity will work and the necessary support is provided, then this learning can become extensively very successful. So, but however, what happens if the faculty isn't convinced about the validity of using role play activity in a particular, for a particular need, then what will happen? Let us not do it, but let us not force ourselves also. Before that, what we need to do, that's why it is necessary, if we think it is positive, let us go for it, and then we will see how it will create positive impact on us. Now learning, the next what we are saying is that learning by doing approach. Now everyone today, everyone has got, every student whom we are addressing in a classroom setup, they have different learning style. Not single student is same to the other one, not even similar also. So, and what works well for one person, basically, it may not work well for the next one, because there are three basic categories of learning styles that are, and that's the reason we say that each student is different from the other. One is, it was reflected well in Dr. Srihari's class also, visual, oral, and kinesthetic. Now, when you're saying visual, learning becomes very effective when we say it is visual, through images, through colors, through other visual stimulus, or through handouts, slides, and through diagrams. When we put lesser words and bring more out of in a pictorial representation, then it impacts our mind for a much longer time. Oral, when we are saying it becomes all through hearing information rather than reading it. Okay, see, we are actually not only seeing it, it is not only visual, but at the same time we are hearing it also. And the last one is known as kinesthetic. Learning becomes much more effective through our experience, through touching, through our involving, through moving, to doing it in experiences such as role play. And that is one of the reasons that today it has been found that even those people who are predominantly visual or oral learners, all of us might have experienced in the classrooms, that they actually benefit greatly from activities like role play. And experience has also taught us that when the Greek philosopher Aristotle has rightly said, that for the things we have to learn before we can do them, we learn by doing them. Actually, we learn more effectively if we are able to do them. Okay. The next, the question arises, why role play? Even though we know that role play is very good, but why do we say that? Why role play? Why is it so very important? It is widely agreed, and after moving from the previous slide also, that when activities becomes very engaging, when it becomes very memorable, learning becomes fun, it becomes motivating. We see 100% attendance, we see 100% participation. The quieter students also, the submissive students also, the introvert students also, they get a chance to express themselves in a much more forthright way. The world of the classroom, that becomes broadened to include the outside world also. Wider range of opportunities are provided to the students, and the real situations can be oriented. Okay, it can be real situations can be created, and the students, what happen? They benefit from the practice, because mistakes can be made with will definitely have with no drastic consequences, because we are practicing them. We are giving them the opportunity how they will bring that. So what happens is that it has been well explained, but why role play? Because we are practicing. 75% of us, of the students, even we are also included in that. They will help us to, we are trying to bring the situations to life, try to keep them what you call the roles we are asking them to play in the as real life would expect them. They will try, the students, they will practice. Then what happens, the role play they mind, they at times they might get stuck up with words, so and phrases. This role play in the practice stage, the teacher has a chance to feed in the appropriate language whenever the student actually gets stuck up. So we have a bigger role to play. We actually handle the students at every point wherever they are in difficult situation, and this may need the teacher to act as a what you call walking dictionary, okay? And monitoring the class, offering the assistance as and when it is required by the students in the process. And if you are not happy doing this, then what will happen? They will come up with you will try to tell them, try to improvise how they will make it more effective and more this one impactful, so that their learning becomes what you call long lasting. Now, then what happened? Error correction. The most important job or the task the teacher undertakes is the error correction. Now, not necessary it has to do it at the same time. It can, what it can do it can note down, jot down all the errors, the mistakes, and it can at the appropriate time it can. That means at the end of the role play, it can, what they can do it. The teacher can correct all the mistakes that has been that has been committed by those set of group or by those sort of students. Self-correction also happens. That is also another thing that we have seen, that if we have the equipment to record, if we are actually recording it, we can do a self-correction where exactly we have gone wrong, and the students can be given again an opportunity to listen to the dialogues again and again and reflect on it, so that they can find it easy to spot their mistakes. Peer correction also happens, because what happens, everybody is involved in a particular role play. So there are some set of who are acting as, who are audience also, who are spectators also, the peers, the peer group, and those students will also will listen to it, and they will also come up and help their fellow colleagues what where all they have committed the mistakes. Now, what are the educational benefits? Now, today, if we are thinking of involving role play, how we can, how this role play can benefit. That's the reason in the opening slide of role play, it was written that actors first, students are actors first, and then they become the spectators next. Okay, so what are the educational benefit as a teacher? Okay, what we are trying to say is that students are the actors over here. So why should you facilitate role play in your class? Why should you even think of implementing role play in your class? Possible learning outcomes or learning goals can be that have the students acknowledge multiple sides of this argument. What have they gained from this argument? What have they gained from this small act that they have performed just now? Have the students face the concepts they might what you call disagree with? We are trying to bring life and personality also in key figures, in key concepts from the course material also that way. In that way, what we are trying to say, why are we trying to put this as an, what are the educational benefits that we are trying to say is that there's an explicit situation which has been established in which the student has to are taking up various roles, specific roles. Spontaneously, what is happening? They are saying and doing what they understand and their character, and how would they react in a particular situation. So they are completely what you called absorbed in that situation, and they will come up with different ways to to arrive at a particular, to come out of that problem. Okay, so these are the educational benefits by, it's not about only acting, it's not that they are only playing the role of actors, but through this technique of learning, they are going through the process how exactly it will happen in a real life situation. We are trying to depict the same situation in a classroom environment. Now, what can students learn from role play? What are the different, what you call, things a student will learn from a role play setup? Now, since it is a learning structure, it will allow the students to immediately apply content as they put in the role of a decision maker. Here, basically, the important thing is that we are trying to understand how effectively a student can make decisions from a complex situation. Who must take the who must make a decision regarding a policy or resource allocation or some other outcome. So we are making the student face the complex situations of a real time. So this technique, then what happens, it converts into, you can say, a very excellent tool for engaging the students and allowing them to interact with their peers as they try to complete the task in an assigned, which has been assigned to them with the specific role. So this role can be done on an individual basis, but generally we see to it that it is done in a cooperative groups or with students. They can maintain the persona of their role throughout the class period. So we form groups, and those particular groups of students will only take up this sort of responsibilities. Sometimes we even interchange the groups also, because students have a tendency to become very comfortable and they at times don't even behave, what you call, don't even participate also. So students are more engaged as they try to respond to the material from the perspective of the character. Now, there are various trends which have been mentioned over here from this perspective, but to put it in a few points, we can say that though there are many points which have been mentioned, but in 7 points we can just say that it increases student what you call interest. The participation of the student in the classroom increases. The student becomes motivates to attend the sessions. You can say the classroom becomes much more realistic. It is no longer very boring for them. What happens, it strengthens the creativity and the interpersonal skills of the students. It engages the students' potential in a complex material, in a very complex way, engages the students how to deal with the tough situations, how to deal with the complex situations. Also, it prepares them to face situations or come out with different alternatives in the complex situations. It establishes what you call positive associations in the classroom. People who may not be this. Often you will find there are groups within the classroom. One group may not be has got rivalry with another group. So in order to break down this rivalry in the classroom setup, what happens, this role play, they establish positive association in the classroom also, and it allows the students to express their opinion on the subject matter. It will probe, and they get even motivated also. They get excited when they see their peers participating in them. So out of what you call excitement also, they also they start opening, and their introvertness actually slowly they move towards being outspoken, or they slowly start becoming extrovert also. The stage fear decreases, and there will less of noise and more of learning process. A learning environment will also develop in the process. Now, how do we do it? It's all about, till now we were discussing that role play is a good learning platform for the students, improving for it in order to improve their creativity also. But how do we do it? We need to, before we get into the act of role play, we need to give clear instructions. Determine whether role plays will be carried out using the student volunteers in front of the class. The teacher may or may not play a role. A teacher will be an observer. A teacher may be a spectator. A teacher may be a facilitator. or this role play will be in partnerships, or it will be in small groups. These all instructions need to be given to the students with every student, and instructions should be given also which student will play what type of role in a particular group or in small groups with role players and observers. So we need to clearly give them instructions, determine how the role play will be staged. Then what we do, we use three things. We use trios, switching, and debriefing. These are the three steps that are followed. Three ways it is followed. Using the role play is done using trios, using switching, and then debriefing. Now, when first what we do using role play in a class, it is smart to involve what you call everyone at first. It is good to involve, no doubt. Okay, so that then what happens? Not a single student feels left out or singled out in a classroom. Now, instead of asking what we can do for volunteers, we divide the class, because if we give the task to the students, it becomes a fish market. Okay, so what we do, we divide the whole class into trios in a group of three. Okay, in which two in each group are players, and the third one becomes the observer. And this each trio, what we can do, each of these trio, okay, two players and one observer, we give them specific written guidelines for the observers. The third person becomes the observer, so we give them written guidelines to each of these observers. Now, once these trios have gone through the role play, then what we will do, we will try switching so that the observers get chance to experience the role play and role players of the other groups and the chance to observe also. So switching also happens. Okay, the observer is not only observing its own group, but it is also observing. There are several trios now that as a faculty we have done it. We have divided the class. So what we do, we give chance to the observers to observe other group members or other group also. Then the next step comes, that is known as the debriefing. See, we all might be doing all these things, but we may not be doing it in a stepwise manner. Okay. Now, when we are doing this debriefing, the debriefing is the most important part of the role play. This is when the learning is clarified. What actually is the takeaway? Okay. It is not, the debriefing makes the learning clarified. It makes the learning confirmed, and it solidifies the learning. What actually is the moral? What is the takeaway today from this role play? So to do debrief, is to reflect. We are trying to reflect and discuss as a group what everybody has, or what each one of us has learned in the process of performing the activity, whether the two players, the role players, or it is the observer. So each one of them actually, and this will what happen? This will require the students to analyze and synthesize the parts of the complex dynamic. Then the learning becomes, not only much more interesting because they are given to participate also, but it becomes more analytical also, and it becomes permanent. We are trying to make it permanent also. Okay, this is what we are trying. Each one of us might be doing it. It is that we don't just give a name to the steps that we follow it. Otherwise, we have been very successful till now. It's only year after year. Sometimes we have to little bit improve our own skills. Now, the next step comes is, what are the steps? Okay, this is how the role play. The earliest two slides were saying how we will be telling the students, how we will be informing or guiding the students to go for the role play. Now, what we are saying, this entire process or this act of role play has been divided into 9 steps. First, it's not that we suddenly start with the idea of role play. What we do, we warm up the group. Step 1 is the warm up of the group. what will in this step, what shall we do? We will involve presenting the students with a problem. Okay, provide examples, have students predict with which might happen. Okay, we will give a situation. That means overall is what we are giving them the situation in the step 1, warm up the group. In the step 2, what we are doing it, we are selecting the participants. Now in this step, the characters and their characteristics are identified, and the students volunteer. Either if the students are a little bit mature enough, they will volunteer, or the teacher will also sometimes, because there are a mixed bag of students in the class. Some may be quite mischievous, some may be decent, disciplined one. So what the teacher does it, the teacher will assign the roles. And the teacher, then what happens, they should not assign roles based on student suggestion. Of course not. We don't follow that suggestions also. What we do it, because the student then becomes very comfortable. Our intention is to make the student in an uncomfortable situation or stereotype the student, isn't it? Then the step 3, set the stage. Okay, a line of action has been given and the settings are established. That means the give instructions part is done over here, and the roles are restated to them. Who will be the players and who will be the observer. Then we have to prepare the observer, because their task is a little difficult task. Okay, so to make sure that the whole group stays in, the teacher is encouraged to assign them the task. Okay, for example, the observer could evaluate the realism of the role that they are playing, or are they playing it in the effective manner, or is it being effective, is it sequential or not, how are the behavior of the students, are they defining the feeling, or how are the ways of thinking of the persons being portrayed. All of these will be carefully observed by the observer. Then the step 5, that is the enact. The players assume the roles and spontaneously they will try to live the situation from the beginning to the end of the situation. Because in the previous step only, you have guided the observer, you have provided guidance to the observer in what way they are going to observe their players. So in the step 5, the players will be enacting the situation that has been entrusted upon them. Then it is the discuss and evaluate. Now in this step, the action of the role playing is reviewed. You're done. It is done now. They have enacted. The observers have observed it. So discuss in this step the action of the role players. It is reviewed. The focus is discussed. And the next enactment is now being developed. What is the next one? You have reached. Reenact. The next one is known as reenact. New interpretations of the roles are shared, and new possibilities that causes and effects are explored in this step. And in the step 8, what you are doing it, you are in this discuss and evaluate was done in the step 6 also. Again, you are because you have reenacted it. The students have reenacted it. So we have to again go back to the step number 6 in order to see under the changed situation how have been their behavior, how they have reacted to it. And in the step 9, we will share our experience and generalize. Now the problem situation is related to the student's current problem, and the real is in a very no student should feel that we are insulting them, okay, or we are defaming them, or we are demeaning their behavior. We have to protect their ego also, or we have to live up to their keep up their feelings also. So we have to see, we are not we should not see that in any way the students are hurt also. So these are the steps, these are the 9 steps that we are following it in order to what you call do the role play. Now there are different types of role playing activities are also there. If we are doing it at an individual level, okay, at an individual level, what we do it, we form a story, or we form a letter, we define the problem statement, and form of a speech also it can be done. It can be done in the form of a research finding report. If the role play is done, that means we tell them you have a study of this, whatever, an annual report or a marketing report or a market report, and you explain it. So this can take any of the, or you do a book review and then you give your own opinion. So this can be one way of, as an author, you do it. Okay, or as an expert, you can, subject matter expert also, you can do it. But when we are doing it in the form of the, it can be interactive role play exercise also, where which we generally follow in the classroom, that is knowledge, attitude and skill enhancement or upgradation we are focusing on. But most important is that in a classroom setup, how are we doing it in a classroom setup? In classroom, what we are doing it, there are 4 main types of role plays we do it. Conflict role play, cooperative role play, information gap role play, and task-based role play. But we have to always bear in mind that there is often an overlap. It's not that you're only doing conflict role play. Overlap and particular situation may combine 2 or more elements and we might do a role play. Now, when we are doing a conflict role play, the participants on a collision course and they ask them to deal with the best they can. Here we test the in under pressure. If we are going for a conflict role play, we have to see how a student will behave under pressure, and are best for students who have some maturity and confidence in their abilities. It may not be suitable for students who are little submissive, who are little silent. Okay, it may be a different this one, attempting to change an airline booking at a peak time or asking a noisy neighbor to turn down the stereo. So this can be conflict role play. Okay, these are simple exercises, but we have to take care which type of students we are assigning the task of conflict role play. Students who are a little bit mature, they can do it. Okay, and they can handle, who are a little tough or strong willpower, they can work in under pressure. We can give them assign them conflict role play. Cooperative role play, they take the opposite track and require participants to work together for a common good. Now, like for a farewell party, okay, for the teacher, deciding the food list for a barbecue, or brainstorming ways to attract tourism. Suppose we give them a situation that you are running a tour and travel, you're a tour operator, and how under this pandemic crisis, how will you attract this one tourist to come for travel, to plan their travel itinerary. So these sort of situations are all cooperative role plays. These are all so involving safe situations. Cooperative role plays are good for gently, easy, shy students who can into conversations and for building relationship within the student group. So conflict was for much more mature students, a little bit of aggressive students, strong willpower students. Cooperative role play are for those type of students who are a little submissive or who are gentle in their behavior, who are a little bit of shy students, who may not even talk with their fellow, with their peers or with their fellow batchmates also. Information gap role plays are basically, they are based around filling in roles in the participants' knowledge. They fill in a lot of information. So answering questions from custom officers, this sort of situations when you have it, asking for timetable details, making a library card, you create this sort of situation in your class. So if it is based on students who are real selves, who are self-dependent. Okay, these role plays are very simple to set up, but they're very fixatious situations. They are not real type situations. They may require more elaborate preparations since they are very fixatious situations, and they are an excellent way to practice questions and answer patterns and prepare students for real life encounters. Like if they face such tough situations also, like where they have to go and gather information, say, or acquire information from librarian or from what you call custom officers, or are interrogating a murder suspect, something like that, then you can go for, you can create this sort of an artificial act and you can go for it. Now, task-based role plays, when do you go for task-based role plays in a classroom setup is that require participants to complete a set activity such as checking into a hotel, you can say directions to a taxi driver, or ordering a meal, or getting a phone number of a potential client, especially for the marketing students, or these days even for financial service provider students also, who are preparing themselves. So they are useful for helping students to practice realistic survival skills. So that means each of the role play, whether it is conflict, we are trying to hone or upgrade the skills, a different type of skills to the students and to particular set of students. Okay, survival skills in the last one, and are an excellent way, you can say, to build students' confidence in their ability to function in real life situations. Now, the next is that how to organize and execute role plays. You identify, these are steps that this is just a recap of how we have been understanding it. Now, identify the learning objectives. What are your takeaways? You will first, and then in a sequential way, you will be giving the situation to the students and how you can tell them to act a particular. But the most important part as a teacher, okay, what are the different roles that you are supposed to play? What is the role of a teacher so that the learning take place? That means some of the possible teacher roles during the role play in a classroom setup while it is going on. We play the role of a facilitator, we play the role of a participant, we play the role of a spectator, and we play the role of a feedback provider. So when we are saying facilitator, students may be fed with language over here. If rehearsal time is appropriate, the feeding is of new language, how they will behave in that. Students do not know what to say next. So we will probe them, we will prompt them, and then from there you can say they can take up. Sometimes students are a little reluctant to start it. So at that time we will just probe them, and from there we are facilitating them. Okay. Next, we can be a spectator also that the student watches. We will, as a spectator, we will watch how the student is performing the act, and we will observe them apart from the observer and advise them at the end of the role play. I left that participant. We can be a participant also. Sometimes, if it is appropriate also, we can get involved into it, take part in the role play ourselves, help in a hidden way, introduce what you call new information. They may not be prepared at all, but suddenly we give them some sort of information to make the act very interesting for the development of the role play, because it was appearing to be very boring. Okay, so ensure the students' involvement, and do not, but we should also see to it that we do not participate much, because we are here to improve their skills and to improve their knowledge and how their behavior, and to improvise on their behavior. But after the role play, in what way we can provide them the feedback. First is positive feedback, all about the creativity, originality, correct expression we will give them. Then the second one can be the mistakes. The second one can be the mistake. We will walk around the class, ask the students what can be improved, what all lacunas have you observed, what are the limitations that you have observed, what are the remedial exercises that can be done. So these are the different roles a teacher actually plays. But there are a few challenges which we might have come across as a teacher, as a resource person, when we are involving ourselves into role play, and they are that very limited class timing. Okay, access to resources also, very limited access to resources. Not enough props are also given to us for like. Sometimes for doing a role play, we might require photocopies, we might require access to computer and internet for us. demands of the curriculum, shortage of time. Okay, we have to cover huge syllabus. Okay, in a very short, so sometimes it may not be possible for us to take all these activities in depth. There are guidelines also that over restricting also to exercise, because we have to see how students will, the students exercise a free will power in terms of how the students will, the roles will evolve. So we have to be very careful in this open-minded and open-ended, and students should feel comfortable also to use their judgment and apply their knowledge. So it is at times very over restricting also, and lack of social skills or unwillingness from the part of the students also to participate. This is the biggest challenge that we face it as a teacher. Certain students may not be willing absolutely, even though you might have created that learning environment in that within the classroom, but they are simply reluctant to participate in this. But at times you will see very charismatic students are also there. They participate in order to attract attention. As sir was saying, that as human beings we always look for attention. Now this is an activity that we can do it, but I need to cover storyboarding also. What I would request, ma'am, shall I continue with storyboarding or shall I do the activity now?
Ma'am, whatever you feel okay, you can do activity also. You have a half an hour is there, ma'am.
I'll complete storyboarding. Can come in 10 minutes. Let me complete storyboarding, because
Sure, ma'am.
storyboarding I will, and then come back to activity also.
That's fine, ma'am. You can do that.
Okay, thank you so much for your this one, for your green signal. Now we will go back to the, yes, there are 3 slides on the activity storyboarding. Now see, Rudyard Kipling said that if, how many of us like history? If you ask me personally, I'm not a person of who would go for history. But Rudyard Kipling said that if history were taught in the form of stories, it would never be forgotten. And it was never taught to me as a stories. It was asked to me, no, you have to learn it and represent it in the paper. So I never liked history. But the storyboarding is a great way, you can say, to teach any subject which requires step-by-step memorization or visualization. We are not forcing the students basically to memorize it or to visualize it, but in a very highly conceptual way, with highly conceptual ideas. These history teachers, because I don't like history, that's why I've taken the example of history. Please don't take me other way. History teachers can use the storyboard to create a famous event, and they can create visualizing, stimulating activity. Of course, these days I find my friends who are teachers, especially in the primary and secondary level, they create a lot of props to make history also very interesting, that even complex ideas are easily put across to the students. Now, what we can do, we can encourage the use of storyboards as a form of what you can say communication, and let the students tell a story in pictures using their imagination. And as a teacher, what we do, we are always looking for new ways to engage the students in the class so that they develop their skills. Critical thinking skills, collaborative skills, communication skills, and creativity skills. These all 4 belong to the 21st century skills. We all know that one size does not fit all. So one of the methodology out of those 15, what we have seen, one approach will not enable all the students to learn in quite the same way. We have been studying, we have been discussing and understanding role play in detail. Some of the students may not find role play as a very interesting way to learn a concept. The traditional classroom layout of a classroom cannot accommodate, you can say, all types of learners, as we know. Because all students, we discussed that they have different learning styles. Some might be having audio, some might be having visual, kinesthetic, or tactile. So if the teaching style or approach does not engage a learner, he may lose the interest also and may be distracted also, even to the point of showing hyperactivity also. So how do we do it? How can we say what is the purpose of this storyboard? If we want a storyboard to be very effective, it will help us to know what it is supposed to do and how it is meant to perform. So what we do, we simply put a storyboard. What do we say? It is a visual representation of how your teaching experience will unfold step by step, how we can step by step we can take them through a story. It usually contains a number of squares, or it might be circles that will help us, that will illustrate different elements. And it should have, we see to it that it has images, it has notes, what should happen at any particular moment. And from that short description or representation of the steps, the student will, at any given point of time, the student will be able to what you call form a create a story with it. Now these are the various what you can say the strengths of a storyboard. That is peer tutoring also happens. I'm not going deep into explaining all these things, but that is students at autonomy is also maintained, sense of responsibility develops. It becomes a source of motivation, self-awareness, and collaborative task. What I'm interested is that how many of us know how to create a storyboard in PowerPoint? Do we all know how to create a storyboard in a PowerPoint? I just want to know how many of us know how to create a storyboard in a PowerPoint. There are different softwares or applications also with the help of which we can create storyboard. But what I thought, since we use PowerPoint and it is very user friendly, it becomes very easy for us if we know how to create storyboard with the help of PowerPoint. How many of us know? If we all of us know, then I won't be showing it. If we, then I can demonstrate it. Ma'am, shall I? Yes.
Ma'am, Archana ma'am, after your session, we have a session on this only. Matlab, he will explain how to use the PowerPoint.
So I'm not talking about PowerPoint. I only talk about storyboard in a PowerPoint. Storyboard. No, only you. I'm not using PowerPoint. How the concept of storyboard will be used in PowerPoint? Only one element.
Ma'am, explain, because I think people are not able to use the chat box somehow.
Okay. See, suppose is it visible? Is it visible? I am showing something else.
Yeah, yours.
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah. So what we do in a PowerPoint, this is a PowerPoint. So we click on the file, we go to new, we have already different what you call suggestions are given to us, right? We scroll down, we see whether storyboard appears in this or not. Suppose storyboard does not appear here. What we do, we in the search box, we write here storyboard. Okay, we click first, we press on search. Step one is that we go and then we see two things appearing, the vertical storyboard and the horizontal storyboard. Okay, what did we do? We clicked on new. Once we clicked on new, okay, let me go back. Once we have clicked here, we clicked on new. Once we clicked on new, we scrolled down to see whether storyboard appears here or not. If storyboard does not appear, we simply punch in the text over here, storyboard. Then we click on the search button. Once we click on the search button, two options appear in front of us. One is known as vertical storyboard. We click on this, and the other one is known as horizontal storyboard. We click on this. Okay. Now, what will happen? Suppose, 1 second, cancel. 1 second, yeah. No. 1 second. So what will happen when we click on this storyboard, for example, and we click on vertical storyboard, it will ask us to create. Now, it is the decision of the faculty to create a vertical storyboard or a horizontal storyboard. Now, when you click on the vertical storyboard, there will be some titles which are already given. Like we have no PowerPoint when we click, and there are new slide. There are different layouts of a slide which are given to you. Similarly, these are different layouts on a vertical format of storyboard. Am I clear? Am I able to explain to you? Are you getting what I'm trying to say? Okay, like similar to a PowerPoint. Okay, so similarly, suppose I minimize this and we click on, suppose we minimize this and we click on vertical storyboard. We had clicked on vertical storyboard. Suppose we click on horizontal storyboard. We click, 1 second, I came back to new. There's a horizontal storyboard also. We click on horizontal storyboard. What do we get? This is a horizontal layout of a storyboard. So what type of a storyboard layout you require, it depends upon. You will opt for the same. Now you don't require these sort of things. So what you require, you can change these pictures also. And you can, what you can do, you can upload your own sketches over here, or how do you want a particular situation to move further so that the students will be able to work upon that and create a story and develop their story accordingly. Am I clear in this? So this is the way what you will do. You will try to create a storyboard. How to create a storyboard in PowerPoint? You open the PowerPoint. Step 2 is clear. You click on the new tab. Based on the new tab, what you do on the left hand side menu, if you don't find the template, you search, you click on the search bar, you find it out, and the step 3 is that the search results, you will get 2 types, that is vertical storyboard and horizontal storyboard. You create the button, and accordingly what you will do, you will download it. Similarly, today, since we have adopted to what is known as, was I clear? That was just a 2-minute description on how to create a storyboard on PowerPoint. So we need not go after any, we did not look for any application, software application or tool in order to teach our student through with the help of storyboard. It is very much available to us from PowerPoint itself, and it's very simple. Is that clear? Okay, am I able to put across my thoughts to you? Now, the next one is why create storyboards for effective e-learning. Today, if we have seen, since the time of this lockdown, all of us have accepted and we have started, or we have learned to deliver online sessions. So why do we need to create storyboards for effective e-learning? Because we are not seeing our participants or students on a face-to-face interaction. So so the world today is full of things to learn, all to learn about. We have to learn so many things. So today we are living in an age where accessing information, if you have seen, has become much easier, and learning opportunities are, we have got great learning opportunities. We have got very ripe learning opportunities. So as being one of the newcomers in this, what happens in the world of sharing information? This is e-learning is taking up in a much bigger way. The technology, what has happened, it has opened up many doors for these traditional educators. We can say that we are traditional educators. We are accepting it when we are learning, we are adopting it. So the new players in the sector, okay, as compared to the new players. So when it comes to e-learning also, this content naturally plays a very important role, and it has become very critical also, very crucial also, to spend lot of time thinking about the best ways to get the message across. How can we do it? So there is the what you call 8 steps that is followed. Know what you want to achieve. These are not, storyboard is the easiest thing in creative teaching. Out of all the creative teaching, different methods of creative teaching, storyboards happen to be the most is the most easier thing. It is hardly difficult, you can say. So as the description, what happens? First, we need to know what we would like to achieve. So what we would like to do is over here is that we need to consider what is the purpose of the lesson of the course. Today we are going to take it up. We outline it. We outline the outcomes that our students would like to obtain. The similar way, how we say program objective, course outcome. Similarly, we will also do it for storyboard also. Learning objective and learning outcome of this story. Understanding the content marketing strategies also in a much more effective way, so that we take our learning process in the most effective platform. Okay, it can actually sit well with our existing strategy also, and we can design similar structuring options also as a part of our storyboard. Second, what we have to do it, that means first was to identify our course objective and to course outcome. The second is the content ready with us? That means have we constructed, have we designed, or have we done the sketching of the content ready with us or not? So we have to see the course material is ready with us. Once that is done, what we do it, we break that entire content into small objectives, small bits and pieces. We have to match it, measure it as per the potential or the capability of our students. Measure our students. Now use these different elements into these. Then what we will do, we will use these different elements as a part of our student, as a part of our students learning, or as a part of our storyboard, so that our student will effectively use different design elements to support our, which might include videos, interactions, quizzes, in that plays, text, images, that we are using it in bits and pieces in that storyboard. Then we will find the storyboard template. We'll give a tool to we'll give a what you call an authorizing tool to it. Are we doing it with PowerPoint? Are we doing it with which platform also we are using it? Are we using Ubuntu? Okay, or are we using our own developed ERP solution or not? And then we will see whether this storyboard is able to be used by our students in the most effective way or not. So this creating storyboards also becomes it's a very effective way of e-learning. And remember, it is nothing known as it is very rocket science, that because we are using any application. Everything is ready with us in PowerPoint. It is just that we have to fit in the pictures, upload the pictures, or upload our own sketch. How we can do it, that will only require some effort on our part. And once we know that, then we can display it to our students, and the students can come out with their own different ideas for one particular clip, the clip of the picture that they are seeing it. Now we go back to the activity of what you call on role play. Now the activity is, in this case, we have 10 minutes. I will be sharing this PPT with you, with all of you. I'll be giving it to Nikat ma'am, Dr. Nikat. She can share it with all of you. This is an activity. Let us try to do it. The outcome, it is reimagining two situations has been given for one particular case. The case is that invention of the internet. Okay, invention of the internet as the inventor. In this imaginative activity, you are the inventor. Okay, consider yourself as the inventor. So in this imaginative activity, we need to forget that the internet we know today was invented by US military. Let us forget, okay, that. How might it have been different if someone else would have been invented? How it would have been different? That is what we are trying to learn now. Now, what we are trying to do is, what is the learning outcome is that which we plan to focus on, and understanding that technology is not neutral, and that the inventors or the designers or the producers who host of the technology, they all leave their traces. They all leave their traces. Okay. They reflect on the internet as technology has shaped in today's social system, and how we will, and it will develop our team skills also. You can continue, you can work upon this as a team activity for the next 5 days also. These are the, what are these? These are the learning outcome of this particular role play. We want to develop our team teamwork skills, okay, team building or teamwork. We want to reflect on our skills on internet as a technology. How good are we based on the understanding of technology, and what is the understanding of technology today? Okay, if it has been done by somebody else. These are the what you call the learning outcome. The scenario, a particular scenario has been given. It is 1979. Okay, consider it is 1979. Email is available through networked computers, but there is no internet as we know it today. There is no internet. So the Berlin Wall is still standing very straight. The wall, it is there between East Germany and West Germany. And there are no mobile phones. Think a life without mobile phones, how challenging it will be. No Android on your palm tops. You have to reimagine the invention of the internet. You have to reimagine that you have to reinvent internet as the inventor. Consider yourself as an inventor. So in this imaginative activity, we need to forget that the internet as we know it today was invented by the US military. We have to forget that. We have to think that we don't have internet. So how might it have been different if someone else would have invented it? US military has not invented it, but we are going to invent it. So what are the instructions? As a student, consider that today we have become students. Okay, we pick up one of the group scenarios below. There are 2 groups in the 2 consecutive size. Divide yourself into 2 groups, group 1 and group 2. Okay, each group has one reason. 2 groups. One group belongs to US Russian Military Research Unit. One group is USSR Military Research Unit, and the other group is an Australian bank. Okay, 2 groups. You have to reinvent. These 2 groups require internet for their own reasons. So each group has a reason to reinvent the internet and has the required skill sets also. You do have the required skill sets. A maximum of 5 students. This was designed for the students. So a maximum of 5 students in each group. Each student taking on a different role within their group. Each students will take up a role. Now, what is the assessment criteria which has been mentioned over here? How convincing is your alternative internet invention scenario? How convincing? Because we all know today we are using internet. Today, if this class is also happening, it's only because of internet. Okay. So how convincing is your alternative internet invention scenario? That will determine your assessment criteria. So whosoever will be group 1, okay, and what are the list of jobs that you have to do? It is mentioned over here. So 1 second, let me do it a slideshow. Then what happens? It becomes easy for you to understand, read it out. So as a military, you will require how many roles you require? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That means 5. 1 general, 1 head of research, 1 KGP agent, 1 allied researcher, 1 member of the Communist Party. Okay, so these are the different roles that has to be played. The role of the general has been well explained over here. Okay, the role of the head of the research is also well explained. Discuss and describe what uses do you see in the WW, in the World Wide Web in the early days. The role of the KGP, what you called agent, is also mentioned over here. That what are the implications and the consequences of the if the were to be free for everyone. Russia is considered to be in the world as one of the strong, having one of the strong military base, and the role of the allied researcher also, what the role is also given over here, and that potential and commercial applications, if it were to be become a commercial, if you are making internet as a commercial entity, how it will be looked by USSR military research unit. And what is the member, since it has been a communist country, so how the role of the member of the Communist Party, how it will so defend the government's position to control the WWW. In the next play, you are trying to do all these things. So what you are trying, the role of the, it has been mentioned clearly, the team is on the track, they are not deviating. The invention, and the CIO is also the chief information officer, a very critical position. So how he will see the use of the World Wide Web in the early days, how the financial controller will see, because it's an Australian bank, remember, it's a bank now, okay, and how the economist will look into it, or the lawyer will look into it, economist will look into it, and the lastly, how the lawyer will look into different position. Now, since we do not have time, what I would like to say is that we can go for this different, these are one example how we can give little wide or broad, what you call, with different little critical roles to the students, and let us help the students in their learning process. I think I'm able to do justice with the topic that has been given to me.